I got a phone call in February. It was a Sunday afternoon, around 2 o'clock. I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number. But something made me pick up, and a man's voice said, "Is this Arthur? The one from the videos?" I said it was. He said, "I'm sorry to call out of nowhere. I found the number somewhere online. I needed to tell somebody something, and I didn't know who else to call." I told him to go ahead. His name was Raymond. He was 67 years old. He had retired 11 months before that phone call, after 34 years as a civil engineer for the county of Mecklenburg, North Carolina. He had a good pension, a house he owned outright in a neighborhood called Mint Hill, a daughter named Sonia who lived 40 minutes away with her husband and 2 kids. He was in reasonable health. He said all of this like he was reading me his qualifications. And then he said, "I retired 11 months ago, and I just figured out that I don't have any friends. Not one. And I don't know how that happened." He paused after that. Not for effect. He paused because he was still getting used to saying it out loud. Raymond had started work for the county in 1988. He was 32 years old, freshly married to a woman named Evelyn, with 1 daughter on the way, and what he described as a reasonable amount of confidence that life would proceed in an orderly fashion if he simply did the right things in the right order. And for the most part, he said, it had. He worked hard. He got promoted. He moved from field engineer to project manager, to senior project manager, to department head. He oversaw infrastructure projects, bridges, drainage systems, road work, that he could still point to from his car window 30 years later. He said there was a bridge over a creek on Highway 51 that he had signed off on in 2004, and every time he drove over it he felt something. Pride, maybe, or just recognition. The feeling a man gets when the physical world still holds the shape of something he did. His marriage to Evelyn lasted 19 years. They divorced in 2007. He said it was not dramatic. 2 people who had gradually become strangers and one day decided to formalize it. Sonia was 16. She lived with Evelyn, and Raymond paid the mortgage on the house in Mint Hill and spent the next few years rebuilding a version of his life that functioned without another person in the center of it. He got good at functioning alone. That was the thing he kept coming back to on that phone call. He said he had taken a quiet pride in it over the years, the ability to manage a full life without needing very much from anyone. He woke up at 5:30 every morning. He made his own breakfast. He drove to work. He managed his department, 14 people at his peak, with what he described as fair but consistent authority. He knew his employees' names, knew their kids' names, knew who was going through a rough patch and who was performing well. He had lunch, usually at his desk. He drove home. He made dinner or picked something up. He watched the news. He went to bed. On weekends, he did yard work and occasionally drove to Sonia's for dinner and watched his grandchildren do the things grandchildren do. He said the word he would have used, if you had asked him in 2022, to describe his life, was full. He would have said full. There was always something to do, always somewhere to be, always someone at work who needed something from him. The county needed him. And that, he told me, is a feeling that can substitute for friendship for a very long time without you noticing the substitution. He retired on March 14, 2023. His department threw him a party. There was a sheet cake with his name on it. People said kind things. His direct supervisor, a younger man named Todd, gave a speech that Raymond said was genuinely warm and genuinely accurate. And he had stood there listening to it and felt something he could not quite name at the time, a feeling he understood better 11 months later when he called me on a Sunday afternoon in February. He was being described in the past tense. For the first time in 34 years, Raymond was past tense. He went home from that party to his house in Mint Hill. He sat in the kitchen, and for the first time since 1988, he had nowhere to be on Monday morning. The first week was fine. He told himself he was decompressing. He did things around the house he'd been putting off. He caulked the bathtub, cleaned the gutters, repotted some plants Sonia had given him that he'd been neglecting. He drove to the hardware store twice. He started reading a book he'd bought 2 years earlier and never opened. The second week was quieter. He noticed toward the end of that second week that he had not had a real conversation with another adult since the retirement party. Not a phone call, not a coffee, nothing. And he told me he genuinely thought for a moment, well, I should call someone. And then he sat there, and he realized he didn't know who to call. He had his daughter. He had Evelyn, technically, in the way that divorced people have each other, cordially, functionally, without warmth. He had the men from work whose numbers were still in his phone, but who belonged to a context that no longer existed. Todd was still the supervisor of a department Raymond no longer worked in. The engineers he'd managed for a decade were still showing up every morning to a building Raymond no longer entered. He said calling them felt like trying to have a conversation through a window that had been sealed shut. And outside of work, he made himself think carefully about this, outside of work, in 34 years of adult life in Charlotte, North Carolina, Raymond had not built a single friendship, not one relationship that existed independently of a role he was playing. There had been neighbors he waved to. There had been a man named Carl at church who he'd talked to after services for about 6 years, until Carl moved away in 2015, and Raymond realized he didn't have Carl's phone number and had never thought to get it. There had been a group of men he'd golfed with twice a year at a company outing, pleasant men whose last names he could not now recall. There had been Evelyn's friends' husbands, who he'd sat across from at dinner parties for 19 years and never particularly connected with. He said, I had the appearance of a social life for 34 years, the infrastructure of one. But when I took away the job and the marriage and the roles, there was nothing underneath. He paused again. I could hear him breathing. Then he said, the worst part isn't being alone. I know how to be alone. The worst part is that I did this to myself, one decision at a time, over 30 years, and I never noticed. I was always too busy not noticing. I asked him what the days looked like now, 11 months in. He said he wakes up at 5:30 out of habit. He makes breakfast. He reads. He does yard work when the weather allows. He drives to Sonia's on Sundays, which he said was the part of the week he looks forward to most, and which lasts about 3 hours before he drives home. He has started going to the library on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, not because he needs the library, but because there are other people in it. He said he had begun to understand why elderly people spend time in places like that, not for the books, for the ambient presence of other human beings, the background noise of a life being lived near other lives. He told me about a Tuesday 3 months before he called me. He had been sitting in the library for about an hour when an older man, maybe 75, sat down at his table and started working on a crossword puzzle. They didn't speak for 20 minutes, and then the man looked up and said, 4-letter word for the feeling of missing something you never had. Raymond said he didn't know. The man said, neither do I. It's not in here. And they both laughed. And then the man went back to his crossword and Raymond went back to his book, and that was it. They didn't exchange names. They didn't speak again. Raymond said that 12-second exchange stayed with him for days. He had thought about it more than he had thought about some entire years of his adult life. Two strangers laughing in a library. That was the thing. When I asked Raymond why he had called me, out of everyone he could have called, he was quiet for a moment. Then you said, "Because you listen to people. And I needed to say this to someone who would actually hear it, not fix it, not tell me to join a club or download an app or try volunteering, just hear it." I told him I heard it. He said that his advice to anyone still working, still in the middle of it, still telling themselves there would be time later for the other parts of life. He stopped himself. He said it wasn't advice. He wasn't trying to give a lesson. He was just saying, the time is not later. There is no later. There is only the Tuesday you are currently in and the man across from you at the table, and whether you learn his name before he moves away. He thanked me for picking up. I told him I was glad he'd called. He said he should let me go. He had yard work to do before it got dark. We hung up. I sat by the phone for a while after that, thinking about Raymond at 5:30 in the morning, making breakfast in a house that knows his routine, but not his name. Thinking about the bridge on Highway 51 that still holds the shape of something he did. Thinking about Carl from church, gone since 2015 to somewhere Raymond couldn't follow because he never thought to write down a number. He called me on a Sunday afternoon. Of all the people in his phone, of all the names from 34 years of a full life, he called a stranger who listens to strangers. I hope he went back to the library on Tuesday.